informal meeting. April 7th, 2025. Copy of draft minutes of the March 18th meeting has been posted on the city website. Copy of the reports have been posted on the city website. As have communications from the American Legion, the County Planning Board, and Kentucky Police Department. So let's get right to department reports, and that's you, sir. Fire.
Okay, it was a short month last month, March. We had 19 calls. 2 of those were fires. One of them was a building fire in Catskill. The other one was a vehicle fire. We had 3 emergency medical incidents. One was a motor vehicle accident with injuries. One was a car pedestrian. And the other one was a search for a person in the water. We had 2 service calls. One was a smoke investigation. The other one was put down as a service call. We had 12 alarm activations. We did put the resolution in, I believe, for tonight we're getting the junior program going. So we have a 17-year-old policy. Now the 16-year-olds will be in with that 17-year-old policy. Instead of the Explorer Post, which we were paying yearly for. The department is doing their own program for juniors, which will be 14 to 15-year-old. And they will have the restrictions and stuff like that. So we're hoping to get that up and running. So we got some kids that are interested. So, that's all I got.
Questions from the council?
The car pedestrian, where was that?
I don't have an address where it was in Hudson. It was in here. I'm not sure where exactly.
Yeah,
It
yeah.
was at 6th and Columbia.
Oh, was that the
They were
bicycle?
okay.
It was a bicycle. Ran into a car,
Oh, okay. East side?
an electric bike.
Oh, okay.
That was kind of fun.
Thanks.
No questions? Questions from the public? Thank you, gentlemen. Next up is our Executive Director of Youth.
Hello, everyone. So spring is a pretty transitional time for us. We're in our last quarter of after-school and teen programming, but we're also prepping for a lot of work over at Oakdale, getting ready for camp. We've also got 2 big trips that we have planned for this month. So Friday, we're actually taking 20 staff and kids to the Knicks Cavs game at Madison Square Garden. And we also have tickets to Liberty games actually in June. And that's thanks to the Columbia County DSS and Friends of Western Youth are funding those 2 trips. The Liberty game we have a few more tickets to because women's sports events are still cheaper than men's sports events. So we'll be taking twice the amount to the women's game. We're opening that up to the YDBL parents and kids as well. So that we can have a lot of people attend that game. We've had over 60 young people apply to work with us this spring, either as a camp counselor, CIT, or a bike mechanic apprentice, and we're starting our interviews this month, and we're really excited about that. Between the church and the youth center, this past month for kindergarten through 12th, we had 10 different programs happening each week. We had literacy voice program with Linda from Family Resources Center of Columbia County. We had Bindlestone Circus. We had basketball with Theo, who's a young person from the community who's volunteering. We had Friends of Western Youth literacy program with Juliana, harvesting history with Claremont, cooking with Sylvia Center, and slam poetry and dancing with Danielle Viegas. And we also had art lessons with Arts Book Columbia County and vocal lessons in songwriting with Beautiful Racket and storytelling and movement with Pamela Padilla. So it's been a very busy month. Just a little bit more detail about the K-2 programs. The kids have been doing a lot of really fun experiments with this literacy program that they're doing. They did a water rainbow where you can see in the next slide, they transferred water from one cup to another just using paper and talked about the transfer there. They read a nice book to go with that. They let that one sit overnight and they were really excited about it to come in the next day. And they've also, apparently a lot of them just learned about Just Dance on the Wii Nintendo. For those of you that don't know, it's like this active game that helps them dance along. And they're getting really into it, really excited, and they're beating these staff. And as I said, over at the youth center, we've been doing a lot of different activities for the 3rd through 8th graders. Let's see, and this was Theo comes in. He's a young person with community volunteering. He's also the one who taught skateboarding in the fall, and that was a really big hit. So we thought we'd be back in skateboarding this month, but we have to do that outside. The weather's not ready for us, so we're still sticking with basketball. He's going to be doing skateboarding again soon with the kids. And we had someone donate a few boards to us that they're going to put together themselves so that they can skate with those. There's a few photos on the next slide. Team programming, we've got still Daniel Gatus coming in, and he's got a core group that comes every week and does the slam poetry and breakdancing with him. The kids who are attending every week are really excited about it. They love the slam poetry part. They're all still a little nervous about the breakdancing part, but they're getting there. We can't wait to see what they develop by the end. And like I said, we're going to that NBA game. Basketball is just such a huge part of our community. Going to the NBA game is just an amazing opportunity for the kids, and they're really excited about it. And the numbers, we had an increase in registration with the youngest group. Everything stayed pretty consistent with the 3rd through 8th. And we actually, when we didn't have an increase in registration, we had an increase in attendance for teen programs. So as I said, Oakdale Park is getting underway. The weather is supposed to be getting better, so hopefully we'll be out there soon. We have a few really big projects planned this month. Over spring break, which is next week. A group called Greenagers is going to come in, and they're going to work to, in the back section by the platform, they're taking out some invasives, planting some natives, trying to bring back some of the oak trees that have been back there. It's going to be 8 kids from the Greater Hudson community, and they actually get paid through this program. And they'll be working through for the Hudson Youth, and it's funded by Partners for Climate Action, the Partners for Climate Action grant for youth-led climate initiatives, Utopia Epic Grant, and Columbia County Soil and Water. So they get to come in, get paid through that volunteer work, and to really beautify Oakdale, which is exciting. And then on Earth Day, April 22nd, if anybody wants to volunteer, we're going to have a group in there. Walmart has an outreach program with their employees, and they're going to come help spread the chips and do some other projects that need to happen there as well. All right. So the next slide, let's talk water quality at Oakdale Park. So first, I just want to say that we've had a study going at Oakdale Park for more than 4 years now with the water quality. They did a lot of like citizen scientists, a lot of training to get the community involved. They've done a lot of great work. They've given a lot of hours to this. It was started with a grant through Friends of Oakdale Lake. The water quality studies have brought us a lot of information. They helped us move towards the aerators, which are there, which will be turned on in the next couple of weeks. A lot of weed removal and the knowledge and information we need to create a plan of action to protect and improve Oakdale Lake for the years to come. And May 20th, I don't know if I put this here, but on May 20th, we're actually having a meeting where all of that is going to be presented to everybody so that anybody who has any interest in understanding more about the water at Oakdale, that whole process and what the plan is to preserve that lake can come to that. And so, sorry, I'll tell you about that next week. On the next slide, though, we did have some calls this week. People were concerned. So last summer we had the harmful algae bloom that came in. It was dealt with pretty quickly. It can be dangerous to people and animals. It's not dangerous to everyone, but it's dangerous enough that everybody should stay out of the water when it's there. It was taken care of very quickly. We did a treatment right away. We don't have any control once that treatment goes in, how long it takes to actually clear out. It took about 3 weeks last time. And we were informed by all of the organizations that work with us that it's something that's happening all over the states and that we are likely to see another bloom since we had one last year. So we do have a few plans. We're going to turn the aerators back on. We have a treatment that's going to go in June. Typically, you wouldn't see it this early, but we'll make out the calls. We did go check it out just to make sure. So if you go to the next slide. And it's really helpful. If people see it, they think they see it. We're not there every day, so if someone can call and let us know, that's always going to be helpful, but we need to know what to look for. So this is what the lake looks like currently. This is not a harmful algae bloom. This is just filamentous algae, which actually grows up from the bottom. It's a plant that grows every single year. It's grown every year that I've been here, even before that. It's not dangerous at all. It's completely safe and natural. It's not fun to step on or walk through, just like from a texture standpoint, but it's completely safe. It's not going to hurt anyone. So that's what's there right now. If you go to the next slide, that is the harmful algae bloom. So you can see it doesn't look like a plant. It looks more like maybe something was spilled on the water, like an oil slick or a paint slick. So you're going to see it look more like that if it is a bloom. You can see on the picture, the farthest to the right, that it is, when it comes up in pools, it looks like very like bright and like almost like an unnatural color. You can tell like it looks like an oil spill happened in the water or something. So that is what you're looking for. The next slide is something also not to look for. I don't have a photo of the pond on Oakdale specifically, but this is what pollen looks like on water. And that can be mistaken because that also floats. It can, with the ripples in the water, look a little bit like that as well. So that is not something to be concerned about. And on the next slide, we have the pollen on the left and the blue on the right, so you can see the difference between the two. So if they're not right next to each other, the pollen could look like a bloom, but looking at this, you can see that there's clearly a difference. You'll see the pollen falling from the trees typically, blowing in the wind. And if you see anything, sorry, and you're not sure, always just give us a call. We'll have someone go check it out. And that's some information on it. In other news, we had a really great staff meeting. We had a monthly meeting to go over policies, procedures, changes, anything like that. Quick training so we can do. We had a training with Working with Arts, which is a relatively new organization started by 2 local artists and educators to share the importance of art for mental health, teamwork, team building, and personal growth. So not only were we given projects and resources to use with the kids when we were teaching and working with them, but they also gave us the opportunity to have that experience firsthand, which is really cool to experience with everybody who works there and have that shared experience. We were recently at the MC Smith report card night, which is always fun. We had prizes, activities, calendar pages, and we registered for all of our different programs. And last bit of information, like I said, registration has been up for camp. We're about 1/3 of the way that we were at the end of last summer, or the beginning of camp last year, so still plenty of room for people to register. Registration does end at the end of May, so that we have time to plan for everything, transportation, meals, all that kind of thing. So if you know someone is interested, you can find the application on our website, or there's QR codes at the end of this report you can scan. And as I said, we did have almost 60 kids apply for our counselors and CIT positions, so we have had to close that application. We don't have enough space for 60 employees, so we want to get those interviews done, let those kids know whether or not they have a job, so we can then encourage them to apply for other organizations and other summer programs. But we will always take more lifeguards, so if you know anyone looking to lifeguard, have them reach out. Friends of Hudson Youth, again, is going to sponsor some of the training that are going to happen. So if they're not trained and that's something that they think is standing in their way, just have them reach out. I'm sure we can figure something out. And then this is just in case anyone wants to scan to apply to be a lifeguard or register for camp. And that's it.
I have a question. So at some point you mentioned you have over 60 applicants for different positions.
Mhm.
How many positions are open?
It's tricky because we have to have a certain amount of counselors based on how many kids we have registered for camp, and then based on the age group of those kids. So we're looking at, right now, we're doing 3 different groups instead of 4 this summer. And so we're looking right now at least 5 counselors in each age group. And then we can have probably 2 counselors in training in the youngest groups. But because the CITs are so close to age, we can't have any in the older groups. So it's like a nice delicate balance of trying to give everybody an opportunity, but not over hire, not under hire, all that. So We have still a couple spots for a logistics person, and we need some older, like, shop apprentices because of labor laws. We've only had younger kids apply to be bike shop attendants, and they can't do everything. So if there's an older teen who's looking for a bike shop mechanic apprenticeship, they have it.
At least 50, something around 20 plus. It could be.
Yeah. Well, I think we'll have at least 20 of those 60 employees.
Is everybody happy with Liz's email regarding the facility center? Which we postponed it last month. Any further questions? Did I make that clear?
Yeah, of course.
But I do have a question. So you do have a lot of volunteers coming in.
Mhm.
What's the process? Because the reason why I'm asking, about 4 weeks ago, they had an issue down in Kingston with volunteers and an incident happened. And they had no policy in place in terms of the volunteers.
Mhm.
What's the volunteer policy in terms of, getting paperwork from the agencies that they've been background checked
Mhm.
and the background check that they're coming in, that's having background checks?
So we have a volunteer form that everybody needs to fill out, and then they fill out when they do that form online. They let us know when they're available for a training. If they're over the age of 19, then we have them get fingerprinted. And if they're under that age, then we just call their references and check in. Most of our volunteers currently are youth volunteers. We don't have a lot of adults come to volunteer with us. And then we run our background checks similarly to how we do for summer camp. We don't do the send away one, but there's two different websites or whatever that we run the names through to check there.
So all volunteers get fingerprinted,
Yeah, if they're above the age of 19, they're definitely getting fingerprinted.
and that's even the volunteers?
Mhm.
And we pay for that, but they pay for it? Who pays for
We
it?
do reimburse for fingerprinting, so we let them know, like, we do the vetting before we have them go get fingerprinted.
Mhm. And that results comes back to you?
Yeah.
Any other questions?
More of a comment. Appreciate all the detail that you put into your report. I really appreciate the fact that you have a breakdown of attendance because of the questions around funding. I think it's important to see the actual numbers. Some people are numbers people, some people like the pictures. I enjoy both. So thank you for all the work that you put in. And I also noticed that you've recently been, publishing the report in 3 languages that serve our community. I appreciate that. And it seems like you're probably using like a software-based,
Yeah.
which is totally understandable when you have,
Right.
such a large,
Yeah.
and detailed report. But as far as the smaller flyers that you have, I think those would go a long way if you have them proofread by someone. And you're welcome to send it to
Okay.
me.
Thank you.
I'm sure
I do
Dewan
appreciate that.
and Shersha would.
Every time I translate them, I'm like, I hope this says what I think.
Yeah, just because a lot of the translation services will use words that are not really colloquial. It might be just like very dictionary word and it's not something that's easily understood by the regular everyday folks or
Yeah.
kids for that matter.
Right, yeah.
So, but either way, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that.
Anyone in the public? Thank you, Liz.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up is our chief of police, Shonda Franklin.
I want to start off by my apologies for not getting the quarterly reports to everyone before they were posted. But I do have some copies. I didn't make enough copies for everyone. If anyone wants to look at it or need it, otherwise I emailed it to you and I can just comment on it. So for our body worn cam reports, there was nothing in the body worn camera reports for the month of March to indicate any training or disciplinary needs. As far as our regular monthly report for March, 0 use of force incidents, 42 arrests for 81 total charges, 12 number of emotionally disturbed persons calls. 3 were at the warning center, 2 were at the fireman's home. I think a couple of the clients at the fireman's homes were just, something was going on a couple of times last month. And then 0 suspected drug overdose or uses of Narcan. I was going to mention the bicyclist versus the vehicle. Vehicle was traveling north on North Sixth Street at Columbia, had the green light, and an e-bike was traveling east on Columbia towards the hospital and ran into the side of the car. The bicycle wasn't hurt, and didn't get medical attention for that. I just want to note the 2 press releases that went out, one last week, one today, about incidents that happened. We made arrests for 2 juveniles from 4 burglaries that occurred between January and March. And then we had an assault that happened last month, and we made arrests on that as well. And then that's all I had.
Questions from council? Jennifer?
Did you really get a cat?
No, that was the April Fools. That was the
Oh,
April Fools.
God,
I
I'm so
apologize.
excited.
I did notice that some people thought it was serious.
Yeah.
I did, and I was happy. And I was,
That's not saying we can't get a station cat.
Yeah.
That's not saying that. But I will, one
I
more.
want to see what, somebody put that hat on without getting scratched.
Yeah, that probably wasn't the case, but back to the quarterly reports that I forgot to mention. So I know I mentioned in our previous meeting when we talked about traffic stops and traffic incidents, that our reports for here, quarterly reports, doesn't always reflect the number of traffic stops that we do make. It only reflects the number of tickets that were issued. So for the quarter, 131 tickets were issued. However, it was, let me get to my original report here. It was 374 traffic stops for the quarter. So approximately 35% of those were issued tickets.
How is the remodeling of the police station to accommodate parking?
So that office is done and has been done. We're ready to move forward with that. However, there's some other things that are in play before parking or a clerk comes to HPD. And a lot of that is dependent on when Tracy is officially retired. The lady, Tracy.
Yeah.
So Kim is still, will be parking revenue until that time.
Anyone else from the council? Thank you, chief.
Thank you.
Heather, your report, please.
Hello, everyone. Just going to share my screen. Hang on. Yep. Sorry, bear with me. Oh, why are you in the way? Okay. This is going to be short and sweet today. We actually converted our financial management software in the middle of March last week. So we've been using it for about 2 weeks. It's obviously a huge learning curve and there's still a lot of things that have to be figured out. So we've been spending a lot of time on that and, obviously trying to get 2024 closed out. So it's going to be pretty quick. First thing we're going to talk about is 2025, where we are year to date. So this is through March for the most part. I will correct where it's not, because this particular meeting is, I think, about as earliest as an informal can be. It doesn't give us a whole lot of time to do all the bank reconciliations and get some of the data in for March actuals before reporting today. So we don't necessarily have all of them in place right now. But so you can see for plumbing and building permits, not a lot of change there since last month. So we'll be looking especially at that building permit number to start kicking off, now that it's gotten into construction time from a calendar standpoint. In terms of parking revenues, you can see that metered parking, we're at about 30,000 year to date. That does tend to fluctuate depending on when the meter collector brings in the dollar amounts, so we'll keep an eye on that. The Front Street law is only through February because we haven't had a chance to calculate those numbers off of the bank statements yet. But I did, Danielle in my office did a rough estimate, and it looks like March was about 35,000, so that's pretty consistent from what it's been in January and February. So we're averaging about $35,000 a month. That's about what we were averaging last year as well. I'm just doing quick math here. So that would bring us, if that stays consistent, that would bring us in at about 420,000, which is obviously less than what we have budgeted for the 2025 budget. So we'll be keeping an eye on that as well. Parking and other permits, that number is looking good. We're at 50% of the budget number to date. Granted, it's small relative to the other three parking revenues, but still. And then parking tickets, we're pretty much right in line with the budgeted amount. We're pretty much 25% of the year through one quarter, and we're at 23% of the budget. So that one's looking consistent and strong. I took the other ones off temporarily because we still haven't received any cannabis, mortgage, or sales tax in 2025. So just to make the page smaller, I took those off. I'll be putting them back on, obviously, as soon as we have anything to report. So right now, it looks like lodging tax is going to be around $53,000 year to date. That software also changed at the same time. So we're going through a little bit of a learning process in terms of how to reconcile with the reports that they're providing. So just as a reminder, we basically take whatever we receive in the first quarter, we charge half of that back to 2024. And you can see that immediately below that, if I take roughly the same amount, that 53.5, if that's the amount that's going to be charged back to 2024, that's going to put us at a little under $500,000 versus a budget of 632. So certainly did not come close to hitting our number there. Looking even slightly more challenging given the high amount of the 2025 budget. Obviously, that's dependent on several new properties coming online, and we will just keep our eyes on that as well. I took the rest of the other 2024 numbers off for the most part because very few of them changed. Lodging tax is pretty much the only one that has a significant charge back. So talking more about the 2024 financials. So we are more or less closed for 2024, but there's still quite a number of chargebacks and things that we have to enter manually. That again has been a little delayed because of our transfer to the new software and the learning curve there. So there are a few more revenues to be charged back, which is it's good. Probably not very many more expenditures, so that's also good. So right now, we talked about this last month. We had budgeted, with the original amount to balance the budget, and then the additional, budget amendments that the council approved throughout the year. We were looking at about $2.2 million of fund balance that was committed to the budget. It's actually going to come in. Again, this has not changed significantly from last month's projection, and I will just reiterate it is a projection right now, but we are anticipating it'll be closer to about 1 million. There are some weird quirks. When we're finished with fiscal year 2024, it's probably, and I will confirm this, with our auditors, it's probably going to look more like a $2 million loss, but that's because there is over $700,000 of grant reimbursements that, because of the delay in the time that the reimbursement requests were made versus when the revenues, when the expenditures were hit. I don't think that we can classify it as revenue per se. It has to be deferred revenue, and then it gets unclassified in 2025. So it's it's an accounting and an auditing thing more than a real thing. But it will make that number probably look a little more, more substantial by about $700,000. Kind of a typo there, which I can see. So, ballpark, what does that mean for us in terms of fund balance? So I limited this down a little bit versus last month, and I just took everything that isn't unrestricted fund balance, because when you all are talking about fund balance, you mean, whether you know it or not, you mean unrestricted fund balance, because that's the only stuff you can touch. The rest of it is all committed in one way or another, whether it was set aside to balance the budget, or whether it's restricted for a variety of ways that can only be used in that way, or whether it's assigned to a certain requirement. So at the end of 2023, we had 3.9 million, almost $4 million in unrestricted fund balance. We've talked a lot about what a minimum is, and I think we all agree that at the least, a minimum should be 2 months reserve. I personally think it should be a little higher than that. Based on the 2025 budget, we would want to see a minimum of almost $7 million in the budget. That went on to 2 pages. But in any case, so it may look more like it's down to 1.9, but again, that's because of that deferred revenue number. If we don't have to report it as deferred, it will come up by that 700,000. If we do, that 700,000 will be added to the 2025 number, which would be revenue without a corresponding expenditure. So it would be a net plus to the fund balance. The only question is whether it hits in 24 or 25. So when you take into that consideration, it's about, 1.3 million. And then, as I said, there are a few more chargebacks and things that should bring that number slightly down. And that's pretty much all I have for you today. I didn't want to get into too much of the operational details and things, partially because my office is trying to figure out all this new software stuff. So, but
Heather,
available for any.
What's that?
Yep. Go ahead.
A while back, we discussed adding a list of delinquent tax payments for this.
Yes, I'm sorry, I forgot that, but I will make sure you have it for the formal meeting.
Okay, thank you. Yes, Margaret.
So Heather, looking at this report for your estimate on the 2024 ending unrestricted fund balance of approximately 1.9 million, which would go up depending on how that 700,000 is reported, correct?
Correct.
Right. So the most that would go up to would be 2.6, correct?
Correct.
And we should be comparing that to the 3.9 million that we had in unrestricted in 2023.
Well, you can compare it against 2 different numbers. You compare it against the unrestricted fund balance, which I think is valid. It shows you basically how much more the city expended than it did take in revenue during 2024. And again, I just want to reiterate, these are estimates. I think they're relatively close, but they are estimates. And then, the other number that you want to compare it to is that 2.661 million, which, is basically the minimum recommended requirement for having unrestricted fund balance. So after 2024, I'm just going to ignore that $700,000 because it's going to come into play sooner or later. We're basically at that number now. So, the question is what's going to happen in 2025 and what are the odds that that's going to increase fund balance versus decrease fund balance? And right now, given the relatively, optimistic revenues that we have in certain areas, that might be a challenge, but there's also certain things we don't know. Like, I think for us, the single biggest, aside from the lodging tax number and whether those properties are going to get up to speed and start paying, the other big unknown is the cannabis tax. And we just don't have enough history to have any idea.
Cannabis.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. And, we don't.
Yeah, so that doesn't look like a very rosy scenario to me. If the fund balance, the unrestricted has gone down that much. And we're pretty much at what we would need as a minimum for 2 months of unrestricted fund balance. And, you know, the other concern that I have, Heather, which I've mentioned, we have a number of projects that are grant-based, and where there is federal funding in those grants. And we have to spend the money into the projects before we get reimbursed. And so there are increasing numbers of reports. There was one last week in Massachusetts, the Springfield School District had expended, I think it was over $40 million in monies that were supposed to be coming back to them once the project was completed, and federal government said, no, we're not going to be doing that. So I think that's a conversation we really need to have. I'm very concerned about our exposure on some of the projects that we're undertaking where we're anticipating that the federal government will actually reimburse us. And the one in Springfield, there was an extension. This was monies through the kind of offset type monies. There was an extension because they had to wait for sign off from an architect or, you know, whatever it was. But so they had an extension through the end of this year. And on the 28th of March, letter went out. No, we're not doing that. And we're terminating this agreement as of right now, no extensions. So I think that this is something that we really, really need to be talking about and looking at our exposure on some of the projects that we have that we're going forward, and looking at how much of it is based upon the assumption that we will, in fact, after we have done bonds and borrowed money to do the project, what is the reasonable expectation that we will be reimbursed?
Can I ask you which projects you have in mind?
I want us to go through them all.
So I suggest the
Yeah,
best to do
yeah.
is go the
the
finance
finance,
department
right.
after we finish with the
Yeah.
tourists, to
Yeah,
really
yeah.
just go through each
Yeah.
project
Yeah.
and check to see how we're standing with them, even.
But we have to look, right, but, you know, I think we have to get the information first to look at it, to see what is the funding source? Is this a state funding source for this particular grant? Is some portion of it federal? Exactly where are we anticipating that we're going to get reimbursed?
I think it's probably easy to go through it, and we can discuss it with
We can
Liz
talk about
too.
it.
and,
But I just wanted to bring it up as a
Yeah, no,
concern.
bring it up, but I just wonder how many of the projects actually.
Well, we'll need
Not
to.
hardly any of it, I think, have much federal consequences, but.
We'll look at the data and we'll report back.
Yeah, we hope the number is zero.
What's that?
Hopefully the number is zero.
Yeah,
Well, it's just prudent to do that. It's a good exercise.
yes, but I don't want to create an alarm for something that doesn't exist, that's all I'm saying.
Well, the number is definitely not zero, so let's just put that out there.
What
But
grants
we'll have
did
to do-
you- Our next
Well,
question.
Heather,
I'm asking Heather a question first.
yeah, we can.
Can you hold on a second? I just asked Heather a
I'm
question.
sorry?
I asked Heather a question and you interrupted. Heather, what are some of the grants you think that might be affected? Existing grants. Heather?
Yeah, I'm trying to think, because this is also it's a very complicated thing, and it's not something that I'm necessarily an expert in either. So especially in the last few years, because we've had to try and determine those amounts, because if we spend over a certain amount of federal dollars, we have to do a whole separate type of audit. So we did that in 2022. We didn't do it in 23 because we didn't spend enough, but in 2024, I believe we did. That was, I think, over $1 million of federal funds. So some of the things that I know have federal components, but this is not a be all and end all list, but I'm pretty sure that both of the grants that the housing director recently got, one was for 150, I think, and one was for like 60. I think those are federal funds. I know that I want to say something like 40% of the funds that are being provided for the Ferry Street Bridge are ultimately federal. And this is where it gets really complicated, because if you look at the list, it just says, oh, that money's coming from DOT or from the county. But the problem is the money gets funneled from the federal department to the state, from state to DOT, and then from DOT to us. And trying to track all of that without having that kind of understanding of all of these federal funding sources is, something that we're working on. And a couple of our engineering firms have been helpful, and obviously our auditors have been somewhat helpful with that as well. I believe that pretty much every grant that HPD has received are federal funds. I believe the COPS grants are all federal funds. So that's another, $300,000,
About the-
$400,000 with their records management system and some other things. So yeah, it's not insignificant. And I'm also concerned. I did see the thing about Springfield. Fun fact, that's where I grew up. But I didn't see the part that you're referencing, Margaret, about them having spent that money. I saw that they were assuming they were going to get that money and then told they weren't going to get the money, but I'm going to have to research that a little further because that's the one piece I didn't see in that report. But I will.
It was not in the article, in an interview on NPR with the school district. And it was relating to some school building stuff they were doing, part of it was a playground piece.
Yeah, air conditioning units was another big thing.
But they completed everything. When the one thing that they were waiting for the architect to sign off on was that the scope of work required that there be some grass areas in the playground. And they had put in the grass seed and so forth, and the architect didn't want to sign off until there was actually grass growing because that was in the scope of work. So that's how close they were to getting this whole thing finished. And then on the 28th of March, the Department of Education said, no, we're not actually going to provide that money. And they had completed the project. It was an interview on NPR. And then I went and I looked it up in the news. I looked up the report of it so that I could see other pieces. But I just want us to take some time to sit down and look before we do expenditures to make sure that we have a good expectation of
Yeah,
actually
I completely agree. So this month's finance meeting is the one you would like me to attend, correct?
Sorry?
This month's finance meeting is the one you would like me to attend, yes?
Yeah, but let me connect with you for them.
I don't think it's this one, because this one we're gonna talk,
Not
isn't it?
No, I don't think there's enough time to do this work before the next finance meeting.
Oh,
have it.
okay.
No,
I just want to make sure I have it on my calendar or not as it's, so I'll assume not this month, but I will start trying to pull that information together and, if a subset of the finance committee wants to meet before that with either me or me and Rob, we can arrange that too.
Because as you say, it's very complicated. It's not like you just look something up and there you have it.
Yeah, unfortunately not.
Yeah.
Heather, if I may follow up, if we were to, well, you said that we've spent enough money in 24, which would necessitate a federal, audit, not a federal audit, but an audit specifically for federal funding. Is it not something that is easily extracted from that audit, or is the audit just mostly, is our bookkeeping standards good and that's it? It's not really going through, what are the breakdowns of these funds? Is that, am I
Yeah, no,
understanding that?
it's almost the opposite of that. In fact, like it would be great if we could just say, here's all the grants we have and hand them off to the auditors and they'll say, oh, this amount is federal, this isn't, this isn't. They don't do that. They expect us to be able to provide them with the information, and then their audit is basically exactly what you describe. It's to make sure that, the charges are appropriate, the charges are within the contracted amount, basically ensuring that the federal dollars are being used in the purpose and for the purpose which they were provided.
Understood. And with the new accounting software, I think this is finally being implemented from our last term that we went ahead with. Does this have an ability for us to, in the future, tag all of our projects and categorize them? Not categorize them, but I know many personal accounting software, you can kind of be like, this is, transportation cost. Is there a way we can itemize funding for easy to search? This project has federal, this project has state, this is bonded, or et cetera, et cetera. Is this something that is either can be added to the accounting software, or maybe has the possibility and we've just not, been utilizing it just because we don't need it, as you mentioned?
Yeah, I mean, we do that now to an extent, and again, you got to remember, like literally when I started here, there was one capital project and it was financed by New York EFC. So there was like, that was like one transaction that didn't have, any competitive bidding or anything. Obviously, as you all know, our capital projects have skyrocketed in terms of both number and dollar amounts. So we've gotten better in terms of tracking. There are certain, I don't want to get into too much detail, but there are certain ways that you code even just the chart of accounts numbers. So anything, an expenditure that starts with a 3 is a state, an expenditure that starts with a 4 is a federal. We've gone back and historically, and because that really wasn't the way that it had been done. So we've been going and trying to clean that up and transferring accounts that were miscoded. So that does provide us with a somewhat better way of tracking it, even in the old software. I think the new software, to your point, will probably allow us to categorize it even more so. The trick is knowing how much we're supposed to be categorizing, because, there are some things that we'll get,
Well,
and it will expressly say, like the thing for the Ferry Street Bridge, the data that comes from that gets sent, to Rob, who eventually sends it to me. So I know what we're supposed to be looking for in terms of reimbursements. It's pretty clear about how much is federal and how much it isn't. But a lot of these other grants, like basically, I don't think there's a single thing, very few of them provide a nice, neat breakout of your grant is 1.4 million. 400 of that is directly from the state. 1 million is from federal. They just don't come like that. And, maybe
Yeah.
if somebody had more grant management experience, because I clearly don't, they would be able to parse it out more easily. But that's the.
I'm kind of more wondering if it's a conversation, because we are in that window of support for the software, right? So is that something that we can work with the vendor to try to, not necessarily just for the coding aspect of it, just, because coding is like your accounting best practices, whereas what I'm speaking to is more just for informational, for your peace of mind, not related to audit purposes or accounting practices. More like, I just want to filter all of our expenditure based on anything that has to do with estate funding, or that may not neatly break down based on how we code that expenditure, but just be able to, tag it, essentially flag it for that specific thing, and then we can actually go into greater detail based on that filter, if that makes sense. Well, we can kind of connect offline with that. If it's kind of.
Yeah, no, I understand exactly what you're saying. I mean, to put it in perspective, we've had the software for 2 weeks and we can't figure out how to get the collections information from our tax and water and sewer collection software into the new general ledger yet. So, so we're not really at the,
There's a learning curve. I just figured I'd throw it out there so that we could, put that into our wish list of
Yep,
things that we
absolutely.
need to. Yeah. Thank you.
Absolutely. Yep, thank you.
Any other questions? Questions from the public? Who are you?
Do we have a director of grants?
No.
We don't. Okay, so you're not getting help in that regard.
We have grant writers that
So,
will.
grant writer.
You know, and right for grant, I know it's in the charter. I believe it's in the charter.
What's in the charter? There's a
Director of grants, an officer for grants,
commissioner for grants.
commissioner of grants, and we don't have that position filled.
No.
Okay, and then, I heard 1.9 for the unrestricted fund balance from last year, and I guess we didn't reconcile yet in March, so we don't have a quarterly number. Heather?
I'm sorry, if that was a question for me, I could not hear what you were saying.
So, well, the 1.9 and maybe the 700 more for 24, in the calendar year ending, it's at the fiscal year as well. Okay, so that's the number. We don't have a number for the first quarter because of various reconciliations. You haven't been able to reconcile whatever. Administrative, you haven't been able to catch up. Do you have a guesstimate on what that unrestricted fund balance could be?
I do not, and it's almost impossible to try and do a running balance of unrestricted fund balance because the revenues don't come in evenly. And sometimes the expenditures don't either. So, I mean, if you tried to look at, a fund balance now, you would see that, we're missing millions of dollars of revenue because, for example, we get $1.5 million from the state. We don't get it till December. So it's not necessarily a useful number. What we do though is we do look at the revenues versus expenditures by fund on a monthly basis, and that gives you a sense of at any given time whether your revenues are exceeding your expenditures or vice versa. So that can give you a ballpark idea, but it's because the revenues are so weirdly spaced out. It's not like a regular sort of retail business where you're getting kind of the same amount and maybe have a bump in the summer. It's just all dependent on pretty much everybody except us. When the state decides to issue its sales tax distribution, when the county does it, when we get the cannabis tax from the county, which in turn has to wait till they get it from the state, the other state aid that we get. So it's all not very predictable, I guess, is what I'd say.
I hear you. And in terms of the reimbursements, how are we keeping our eye on that?
Well-
Or which do they come in, or is there some function where somebody is like, well, we expect to get this, it hasn't come yet, but it's a projection that could come maybe it's next fiscal year, I don't know. So the reimbursement, expectation, is that something that we're keeping our eye on?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, again, a lot of this is relatively new in terms of the scope and the scale. So we have gotten better, and when I say we, I mean the city as a whole. But I have been more in touch with, for example, DPW, which is where the majority of the grants were, making sure that they are letting me know, and they in turn, are usually engaging an engineering firm to do the project management. So I've been more in touch with them, trying to make sure that everybody realizes whenever anybody puts a grant disbursement request in, they need to let me know, because whether or not we receive the money, we still have to book the revenue at the time that the request was put in. So then I've started to keep a list of all the disbursements that are going in. And obviously, me and my team are looking at the bank accounts to see if the money actually comes in and when it does. And sometimes it happens right away, and sometimes it doesn't happen for a year and a half or more.
Ouch.
Yeah.
Okay, I think that's all I got for now.
Okay.
Oh, just one other thing, what is spreadsheet help? Sometimes an off, out of that software, or maybe we just throw it together in an Excel spreadsheet?
Yeah,
I mean,
trust me,
sometimes-
I have many, many spreadsheets tracking all aspects of this stuff.
I hear you. All right, well, God bless.
Okay, any other questions? Thank you, Heather.
Yep.
Mr. Perry, you're up.
All righty. Let's see if I can keep the momentum going. All right. Septic revenue for February was $20,500. Obviously, we usually expect to book about twice that. But January and February tend to be slower months of the year, so it's not unexpected, even though it's half of what we forecast. This is on the Headworks building, so we're going to talk about the bar screens that are being replaced. One has been repaired, the other one's been is being totally replaced. So this is what it looked like before, and this is what it looks like now. It's all been carved up and chopped up. The replacement bar screen is in the channel. It's not in its final position. It hasn't been powered. The motors aren't there. This is the screening press that goes on the back of it. Once everything's installed, what happens is all the rags and leaves and things that are pulled out with the rakes fall into this hopper. They get washed off. The solids go back into the treatment process, and then all of the heavy stuff gets pushed through a screen, an auger, onto our a belt to be hauled away by a hauler. The we did, I guess we'll be a little bit of back and forth with what you guys have been discussing with Heather. There was an environmental planning grant that we received in 2023. The first payment was $120,000 total. $20,000 was a local match. $50,000 was given to us up front before we actually did anything. And the project was completed over a year ago, and we are in the process of getting the final $50,000 within the next couple of months. The reality is these granting agencies, they don't give us a schedule of when they're going to pay. We put in the request for the submission, and some projects are extremely quick, and sometimes they have schedules that are run quarterly. There's a lot of nuance to it, but the reality is, in the end, we do get the money. Just some are harder to get than others. We do have our first round of sewer extension permits have been issued by DEC. This is a subject matter that's been for a couple of years. It kind of climaxed with the council in September of last year when we created the I&I bank and the process by which the projects would be reviewed and submitted. So we do have 2 that have been approved. We have another 2 that are under review by DEC right now. And I think there's 3 or 4 that are pending. Water department. So about 7 or 8 years ago, we installed a new water main on Oakwood. The water main was put in. There was an old 4-inch main, but the services were still on that main in advance of the paving project, and also because we had a break on the 4-inch main over the winter. We have abandoned that main. We migrated all the services over to the new larger main. So this is the taps. This is a tapping sleeve for the new connections. And you can, after that, the connections were migrated, then we cut the sections out of the old main. And this one actually required a dry tap to shut down the water from the being backflow. Anyway, there's a reducer and then a cap. So everything is shut off on that old 4-inch main is out of service. The crew will be doing restoration with concrete on that, and then that'll be milled out and then paved as part of the paving project. Just as I don't know why I'm going back to a sewer thing. So this is that close-up of the sewer break that was on Columbia Street. Now, in most instances, when we have, if the failure with the sewer is pipe, we have a water break that's pipe, we excavate, we cut out the old, or put a sleeve on it, we install new, we backfill, and we put everything back in service, and boom, we reopen it to traffic. The issue is that with these old stone sewers, which are scheduled to be replaced next year, is that you can see that you've got several capstones that actually fell in and are stuck inside. And the sewer main's probably about 3 feet deep. There's no fitting that's going to go over top of this that's going to seal it. So what we have to do is we actually have to form it out using wood and back it up with stone. We do this on the other sides as well. And then we come in and we cover it with concrete. The concrete has to set, right? You can't just blob the concrete in there, then throw dirt on top of it and let vehicles run over it. So that has to set. Then you have to backfill with stone. Then we have to do the concrete subbase on the top. So these stone sewers do take a week to excavate, to repair, and to restore and get service back on it. It's not like replacing a piece of pipe, which we could stay till 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, get everything back up and running, boom, and everything's good to go from there outside of permanent restoration. Another sewer failure on Parkwood. This one where you see this probe, the yellow handle thing, this section of pipe was in between all of the oakum, the sealant had come out. So it was just sucking material, creating a valve. We actually cut that out, and we cut out on the other side where you see these shovels and replaced it with a new section of main all the way across, and then put it in concrete to load it down and tighten everything up, and then backfilled and put it back in service. We have the Union Street tree project that we did a couple of years ago. None of the trees are doing great. Some of them didn't make it. We had a warranty claim replacing them, but we're going to replace some of the other ones that failed even from that. But you can see here's the root ball. The idea is that the soil is supposed to be somewhat permeable so that the water can perk down and be and go back into the earth. But you can see the root balls themselves didn't really take. So these trees weren't that good. So at that point, we're removing all of the soil that was put in there around the root balls, and it'll be new soil and new trees going in later in the spring. Let's see, some dead trees. Notice to proceed. So this was the notice to proceed. It was issued to Louise. They're going to start doing the ADA ramps within the next couple of weeks. And once the ramps are done, then they do the, they start working on the paving, milling and paving. And that way they make the road match the ADA ramps. So you can see there was an estimate of about 39 ramps. Probably about a quarter of the project are just ADA ramps. The last of the, where'd this guy go? Where'd you go? There we go. Last of the RFPs were installed. What happened is we had 8 of them in total. There was a member item from D.D. Barrett that Dominic was able to secure. We had issues finding the final location for the last set. It went on for a couple of years. We did test pits by the Opera House, by the hospital, a couple of other locations. And so, but we wanted to close out the grant, so we chose Oakdale to be the last set. These are installed. We did submit the reimbursement. This was a grant that came in 2021, and we did receive the final payout once we installed these guys. So the payout was received a couple of weeks ago. That project is closed. We have, what's going on here? This is just more paving prep. We talked about the roads are going to get milled and paved. We go around before and check all of the infrastructure. These are catch basins on Parkwood and manholes on Parkwood. Sometimes we need to go down 4 or 5 courses. Sometimes it's just a course or 2 to get everything level. We put everything, put new material around it. And that way, when the road gets put down, we don't have any failing infrastructure around it. So they're continuing to move through. Like I said, they have another 3 weeks before the milling and paving begins to do similar on the other streets. Cemetery, just doing some seasonal. Obviously this tree is long dead, and we do what trimming we can do to try and minimize the danger to the stones and to people if we get a dead tree here. DRI, so this was Promenade Hill, the steps. We use a sand product because the quarry told us that we shouldn't be using salt on this. Obviously, that we have to keep the stairs open during the winter time. So we did use a fine sand product, which, left some residue behind. And, but, crisis averted, right? We were able to just power wash it and it's all back to normal. You'll note also these pavers that are up here in front, you'll see like the first 3 courses that are closest to the sidewalk have dropped down. That's because when the park was installed, the sidewalk, we had to match the existing sidewalk. We knew that the new sidewalk was going to be a higher elevation, but we couldn't make the pavers, an inch or inch and a half higher than what the existing sidewalk was. We had to match existing. When Louise poured the new sidewalk as part of the streetscape project, they reset the 3 courses to bring it back up. Obviously, during the freeze and thaw cycles, they settled, so they know that they have to have a mason come down, pull them back out, and reset them to match the existing grade of the new sidewalk. Let's see. I do get lots of. So we purchased the streetlights from National Grid for $300,000 last May. Obviously, we didn't intend to actually run a utility company of our own. And what we found out is that, National Grid doesn't migrate the lights from the old poles to the new poles. There's any number of issues that go on with the electrical services and the technology. And so, we have a local electrician that basically we've dedicated just to all things streetlight. First part about it is just purchasing an inventory. We don't have overhead arms for Cobras. We don't have the hangers, any of the bolts or hardware to deal with overhead lights because, quite frankly, in the city's history, they never had to deal with it before. So this is kind of a bottom-up approach, but it is something that we're working on a permanent solution for, and we should get all these streetlights up and running, hopefully within the next couple of months. We do have also at the cemetery, the Muslim community purchased an additional 70 plots for the Islamic section. So that took place a couple of weeks ago. DRI, this is the Fagari. So part of the pre-demolition was the Department of State wanted us to pull back samples of the historical shacks. Historical in their term is 1930s or from 1930s to 60s, I believe. Anything from the 70s, 80s, or later is not considered historical by their definition, not mine. So anyway, this section of the tin that you see here on the top was removed. There was some other tin siding that was removed here. And, so we've got that kind of stockpiled. We'll put it on a shelf inside. And I believe there's a set of doors that we've taken off. You can see some posters from the Chatham Fair. It looks like the tractor pull. We'll store these inside of the one of our sheds, and I guess they're to be part of something re-envisioned in the future. Also, Louise is back in town with the streetscape project, so you can see the magnitude of the demolition. These streetlights had to be taken down and relocated. This intersection of 2nd and Warren, they're actually getting bump outs all the way around, so they'll actually be like almost like a little plaza here on all four corners actually. And so, it looks like a mess now, but in a couple of weeks it'll be poured. They're looking at finishing their contract in late May, early June. We do have a change order from the engineers regarding the Complete Street project. That's Arterial, Creighton Manning, and their third-party inspector. Their request is based on the fact that they're saying that the project was supposed to be done, years ago, and that they have all these overruns. Their request is for $175,000. So obviously we'll have to have a discussion with, I don't know, Mayor, treasurer, or whomever. You guys can decide, whether or not you want to entertain it or approve it or not. I can tell you that they're working right now and they've exceeded their budget. So they're not going to get paid without the change order. The Ferry Street Bridge, Val Russo's back. So this is them pouring an approach for the north deck. The south deck is supposed to be, I believe, going to be poured on Thursday. This project's going to move rather quickly. And they should be done end of May, early June as well. And this is a trade catalog. It was from a U.S. Bridge calendar, and this was May's portrait in 2025, and it's just the superstructure. Obviously, this was taken last year. Just as a quick thing about grants and how and who loses and who doesn't. A lot of grants and the agencies are kind of, I don't want to say easygoing, but easygoing, and some of them are not. So, if you deal with the Office of Community Renewal and get a CDBG grant, I'm aware of 2 grants in Columbia County, one here in Hudson and one in Kent, that they were awarded, the applicants were awarded the grants, they were given the award letter, they commenced work before they received what's called a release of funds. Now, OCR is the only agency that I know that does this, but because they commenced before they received their release of funds, they received a letter saying that they'd lost their grant. So, it's not uncommon for someone to say they lost a grant and blame it on a lot of geopolitical stuff when maybe they didn't behave or follow the terms and conditions of the grant. All I'm saying is, in this world, don't take anything at face value. So, all right, that's all I have.
Questions from council members?
I think I already asked this before, but Rob, do you think that bridge is gonna be ready to go for Flag Day?
Yes.
Nice. Can't wait.
Public questions? Okay, thank you, Rob.
Thank you.
Councilmember Belton apparently would like to talk about status of parking project.
Hi, everybody. I just had a couple of things that I wanted to talk about today. The first is concerning parking at 11 Warren Street. Margaret Morris and I met with the county supervisors and the space utilization committee. They asked if the city would be willing to give them 10 to 14 parking spaces in front of 11 Warren Street at a discount of half. They also are willing to pay the entirety of the fees on a yearly basis. If we were to give them use of the on-street parking in front of 11 Warren, this would only help with parking issues with their staff. It does nothing to help with parking issues that are created when people go to use the services at 11 Warren Street. The public defender, the probation office, and the election board. During the meeting, and again by email, I said that this was a problem of their creation, and I thought that they should be doing more to mitigate the problem. I suggested that they take on the cost of paving the gravel lot by the Ferry Street Bridge. This would help to alleviate parking issues for both the county employees and for the people who would use the services at 11 Warren. If the gravel lot is paved and lined, I also thought that the city should meter it. In discussing this with the parking committee, all were against discounts for the county and agreed that they should be doing more to help mitigate the parking issues they've created. Last June, I wrote to the planning board concerning developers who put forward projects with inadequate parking. I noted the parking figures for 11 Warren Street. I told the planning board and many of my fellow council members on different occasions that I think it would be a good idea to charge developers who had inadequate parking a fee for each parking space that they were not able to provide for their projects. This money could be set aside for repairs to our already existing parking lots and the creation of new parking in the form of perhaps a parking garage and the acquisition of an EV trolley to take people from municipal parking lots up and down Warren Street and to the waterfront. Other municipalities have done this with success, and I think it's an idea whose time has come for our city, and I'm interested to know what you think. That's one of the things I wanted to talk about.
So there are two separate things going on. One is we have to decide what we do with 11 Warren parking request. Which I don't know if this is something we discuss and we decide here or how, I don't know what's important for this.
I'm a little confused by what's happened so far. I mean,
I didn't think it should remain in the parking committee, and I wanted to know how other people felt about it. I think that having 3 people or 4 people decide the fate of, tens of thousands of dollars is not.
Well, the parking committee wouldn't decide it. We would have a recommendation for our larger committee. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but
The general feeling though from the parking committee was
No.
a big no.
The sense I got in that meeting, they didn't have a firm number. They gave us a dollar amount. I thought it was more than that. I thought it was more like 65-70%
No,
of full-time.
they even gave us a dollar amount based on 12 spots and half of what 12 spots would be annually
Crystal,
for 5 days a week.
Yeah, this might be.
Crystal, I don't really understand who has the authority to negotiate something like this.
Yeah,
No,
There's gonna
be. It would have to be the council.
No,
The executive.
Crystal?
that's why I'm doing this.
So
these
are the,
Wait,
let's
you get closer to your mic. I can't hear you.
So I'm sorry, I'm losing my voice. Apologies. So I would have to just take a look at the charter on setting the parking fees. But I would think that if there's gonna be an agreement negotiated with the county for a discounted rate, then that could be something that the council could do, but I'd want to just double check at the charter level. Excuse me.
Oh,
To
gosh,
see,
bless you.
apologize, to see whether it can be done at the council level or if there is an executive requirement for it.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Go ahead.
We're talking about the parking on the
On the
street.
street.
Would this become county parking that people, residents could not use after hours?
That's what they're, well, no, not after hours. They want it during the day,
Office time.
office time.
What they want is 9 to 5 weekdays, with signs up saying reserved for Columbia County.
So the issue is, again, what
And
kind of,
then, sorry, no. And then, they were proposing, and then, I don't think it was like it was a suggestion, I don't think it was like a firm, this is what we pay you kind of thing. But their argument was that you would have, you, the city, would have guaranteed 9 to 5 income. Whereas if we don't do this, spaces might be empty and so forth, and so that was their logic for saying that they wanted.
Especially if they're.
No, I'm just relaying.
I know,
just
I
relaying the
know,
conversation.
it was a ridiculous argument.
I just wanted to mention that we also, if we do this for the county, then we also have, what happens, DMV says, okay, we want 15 spaces as well.
So what happens to them?
If DMV says we want the 15 spaces as well, why did? you
Yes,
give
but
it to
we
them?
give them free parking
parking, I
permits,
know.
which is ridiculous.
where's the county supervisors, the 5 county supervisors? Why are they not involved in this? The weight vote really takes out a lot.
Well, it was the Space Utilization Committee, and our representatives are not on that committee. I think Linda was, and then now she's not.
I don't think all of the space people were there. It originated with one of the county supervisors, reaching out to me to say, can we just have a talk to, about the parking situation? And I said, well, yeah, but you need to include, we have a parking committee. Jenny Belton's the chair of that committee, and she needs to be in this meeting, because I can't really talk to you much about parking. And so that's how this, and it was just, nothing was decided.
No,
And it went back to the parking committee for discussion.
right.
And so that's, as
And
far as I know, that's where it's.
that's where it is
Yeah.
right now. But I told them that I would give them some kind of an answer.
Right.
And the feeling is no.
The answer is further discussion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The answer is what?
Further discussion.
Well, I mean, we need to know what Crystal says.
Yeah.
So we
Yeah,
have to go
that's
from there, and then, I don't know if we need an executive meeting for that. I mean, We can just, okay.
Litigation.
Okay, and about the second part, I mean, we have been talking about it for a while now.
We need to do something.
Again, what I would suggest is maybe the parking committee can come up with a policy
Okay.
and then present it to us. Is that a good start?
Okay,
And then we
Great.
can go from there.
great. Perfect.
Jennifer, regarding just that last part, have we spoken to maybe the planning board and see what their feelings are regarding?
I wrote to them and I got a very strange response.
Regarding what, Ronnie?
Our wish to possibly adopt a policy that would charge development.
No, I think originally they were in favor of it.
Yeah, I think so, too.
Remember?
Yeah.
That's-
But it was a very weird, and only one person responded to me, so.
No, I think they sent us, their
I think there was their
attorney
own-
sent us a letter saying that they are in favor of something like that.
Yeah, it's possible.
That might be a year
Lost in
ago.
communication, maybe we should have a face-to-face.
Let's- Yeah, Well, at our next meeting.
Well, as long as we're reasonable, I mean, we're not
Yeah.
gonna ask millions, but if we ask, a reasonable
Well,
amount.
Right,
I
you can't
think-
look at an amount that's gonna discourage you from.
Of
No,
course
that's
not.
not
No,
exactly
we have
what
to
we
have
want. We
develop-
just don't want
Yeah.
overdevelopment and then no place for someone to put a car.
If better parking means better services for development, right? So
Yeah.
that's our ideal situation. We're not
That's what they should.
we're not being punitive, we're being proactive about
Right.
solutions.
Exactly.
Okay.
The second,
More.
there's a second part to this. The second thing I wanted to talk about was the resolution that's being put forward tonight regarding parking fees. I think we should table the resolution and revisit it after the implementation of phase 3, when all of the Warren Street parking and municipal kiosks will be in place. I think we should be moving forward incrementally and deliberately and informing the public of our plans, which are, as of now, not completely solidified. There are still a lot of unknowns, and I would like to allow ourselves the time to problem solve as we move through this process before adding another layer of issues by increasing fees.
Is the thought about this resolution to get ahead of it so that we are not having to multiple times reprogram the machines? Like before installation, we set the fee.
That is
and
so
then-
easy to do.
Is it?
It's really easy.
It's more to discourage people from, the ones where the parking is $1 to go move up.
To the 20,
to
yeah,
go
that makes sense.
Up, Warren.
No, that's not exactly what it is. The programming of these things is so easy that we could start at the price that it is now. And
No, I understand that.
once the other kiosks are in, change it all at once. I think asking businesses and our residents and our visitors to find 8 quarters for 2 hours every time they want to park, it's going to be a giant pain in the butt. And when I brought this up during the parking committee, our consultant said, well, we can just put up signs that say, well, you can text to pay. So what if you're a person that doesn't have a phone? What if you're someone who doesn't have a credit card? I just feel like what we're doing is moving a little too rapidly and haphazardly. I mean, looking at the thing tonight from DPW, now we see that the sidewalks in the first area that we were going to start with things are not even going to be finished until June. So there's a lot of moving parts to this, and I think we need to take a more holistic look again, like take a step back. We also got a quote this last week, the end of last week, for phase 3. We may want to, because of budgetary constraints, look at the whole thing again and do a little more discussing before moving forward with this tonight.
So what are we gonna be charging now for this, to the lower?
Well, it'll be the same as what the others are right now. So it would remain 50 cents until they're all in.
I think that's a fair point, not to,
Dominic, what do you think for car parking?
Okay, we can make our decision about that when we get to the resolution.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
But just a point of clarification. So the 11 or 12 spots with the county, would that be in perpetuity
No,
or one time?
it's not even anything yet.
I would suggest you do something like that.
There was just an informal meeting.
No, I understand. I make a suggestion. If you do anything like that, make sure it's in perpetuity. Now, there was other discussions I'm aware of, where you were talking about the developers putting money into a fund.
Yeah.
Would that similarly be in perpetuity?
What is
Because
it?
parking spots get used, that in perpetuity means every year,
I know what it means.
or a one-time shot. I think it's worthy of consideration.
I think when it comes to any city decisions, nothing is in perpetuity. It's always,
Kind of contrast.
it's always, yeah, it's always up for review.
Always change.
Yeah.
We're going to revise it.
Yeah.
Or revisable, but initially, I think you would want to have the income every year.
Yeah, but you could do
Sure,
it.
but then,
Or until, like in the case of the developer, maybe you achieve your purpose and you have enough money and then you can stop it.
Of course.
That's a little.
Okay, well, thank you for that.
Your voice of reason.
Self-described, yeah. Our next presentation is a Big Cow who's coming back to explain and eventually ask for a renewal of their contract.
Hi, good to see everyone. I don't know if there was a clarification.
Did we get something on this?
I don't know.
Oh, I had sent it a while ago.
Is it?
I didn't see anything on this.
Okay.
Okay, let me, I'll see if I can find it and send it to you.
It wasn't there this morning when I was.
Okay.
it was just sent to
I just sent it
specific
to
person.
Tom and to Liz, but
Okay.
maybe that's my fault.
It didn't get posted.
Liz,
It
you have
wasn't
it?
published.
Yeah, we didn't receive nothing.
No, it wasn't there today.
My email this afternoon, I didn't have any.
It's not that different from the one you saw before.
Send it to Logan?
I will-
Or me, it's in my name.
What do you know?
Sorry, Cal, I didn't.
No, it's okay. I probably should have resent.
Where are you set up now?
We just opened in Germantown at basically their Oakdale called Palatine Park.
What?
Palatine Park,
Sound like co-works.
Yeah.
Oh.
yeah, right by the library.
Oh, yeah, no.
Yeah,
How's that going?
it's good.
It's the only
It's been good.
intersection in town. It's the only event in town.
We're hosting the library fundraiser next. There's a pancake breakfast and then the farmers market's the day before. So like working with them on the weekend, we're sharing.
Of course, you were going to
building
email
there.
address.
It's been-
The email addresses,
Yeah.
our email
And
addresses
you're not gonna do the.
are at a domain that no longer.
The what?
we
The
do not
river
own it.
front. You're not gonna go there.
That was a glitch.
I don't think it's the space.
Sorry, you're still getting that?
No, I mean the fact that like, if you go to, so
Plus people.
it's our name
freaked out.
at City of Hudson.
People love it.
Or at our
Yeah,
website,
they
at
do,
City of
yeah,
Hudson, New York.
We have both.
It's more tucked in, right? It feels like you try more
So,
private. maybe.
Tom, can we move this along? So I actually have another meeting at 8:00.
Sure. Certainly.
We don't have to go through, I mean, most of you guys know a lot of this. The real big thing that I just wanted to ask for a difference for next year is really just the permission to install outdoor outlets on the building that's there. If we're trying to go through time, I mean, I don't know if you guys want to go through every single thing. I mean, it went well. We had a good season. I don't think I even calculated. I think we had close to 2,000 visitors. The dunk tanks really worked. We didn't have any incidences of people going in the water. We worked with the plunge again. We had more public hours, and I think we had almost 50 usages of the community sweat fund. So people accessing this on either for free or like at a discounted rate. Yeah, I guess you can just skip way ahead. The only big thing is wanting to install outlets and then also come up with an agreement for a monthly fee for use of electricity. And that's mostly because we did have, I mean, this winter was crazy with the ice, as everyone kind of experienced, but wanting to be able to install heated mats that are like on a timer just for when we're open, that helps mitigate ice and like for injuries or slipping. Not that we had any, but just was, we were out there salting a lot and shoveling our own pathways. because DVW does the, parking lot, which we're so grateful for, but then we have to do the pathways down onto the beach and just also being able to provide safety lighting, because during the darker hours, like we have to use all these battery operated lights. It's not that great for the environment to always be using batteries, and also just for the parking lot too at night, just for safety. And so I had done some research and proposed to Liz and Tom an email, but I'm obviously it's up to you guys, like, I had spoken to a lot of other people that use these like low wattage masts and the lights around. They said that they usually spend anywhere from $150 to $200 a month to use those.
So what is your rent now per month?
I don't even, 150, I think it is.
Is it?
Per month? Yeah,
Who's gonna pay for installation of electric outlets?
we would pay for it.
And then are we paid for some kind of invoice or something? How do you pay for the electric?
Separate meter.
Well, the building's not used during that time, so like we would work with the department to pay the monthly bill of whatever's used from us, basically.
You can see, would it be like a separate?
I think it's able to see because now this that they have a smart meter. And you could track it, what time, how much.
But do we have a smart meter?
I mean, we
Yeah,
could
just
also the option of just like a flat fee, like assuming this is what it is, just to make it easier and just doing it that way. So we haven't finalized that yet, but in one way or another, we'll be able to figure it out. We can review what we're currently paying. We've got 2 different meters anyway, so.
So do you want to, propose this contract for our next meeting or?
Yeah.
So you'll send that, your version of it?
Yeah.
Soon, so we have time before our meeting?
Sure.
Do you use solar lights at all?
I do, but they don't actually get that bright at night. I've tried lots of different things.
Okay, so we can have more questions then too. I hope you'll join us.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
Okay.
I might have to join via computer, but I'll be there.
Great.
If I may suggest a quick thing. I think for at least a year, maybe it would be better if we go off of usage and then we would have enough data to be able to forecast like a flat fee. Because I don't know if that would be fair to you or not, but I would imagine that's kind of a balanced approach for both. You're not overcharging you or undercharging you. But you guys can discuss that, Liz, and especially since we would have, as you mentioned, the meter is not being utilized for any other purposes during your normal window operation, right? Is that?
We have, we have the minimal charges throughout the off season.
Yeah, it's like yes.
Liz, can you send me that so I can send it to the council?
Yeah.
As soon as possible. Thank you. Thank you, Kelly.
Thank
So we'll get it on the agenda as we move along to our resolutions. I'll be looking for introductions in seconds. First resolution is appointing Commissioner of Deeds. Can I have an introduction in a second? Go on and. The second resolution is accepting a check from Hudson Valley Credit Union for $500 to the censor. I'm sorry. Fire. Yes, the fire department. Jennifer and, yeah.
Logan, do you mind blowing it up a little bit?
The next resolution authorizes the renewal of the contract with Hudson Powers. Can I have an introduction in a second? Jennifer and. Go on. The next resolution is the one that was tabled last month, authorizing memoranda of understanding with the Sylvia Center. Jennifer and, come on. Can I have a motion to table the next resolution about increasing parking? Jennifer and Ryan, all those in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Okay, so this is it. The next resolution is, as you know, every year we have to have a paper of record, and the only one that would qualify is the Register Star. So this is a resolution designating the Register Star as the city's official newspaper. Dewan and Gary. This next resolution, can I just say, it's an introduction in a second. It comes from a union, and it's basically, one of our more symbolic resolutions, but it's about preserving Social Security.
So, who originated it?
His name is Chris Delaney, and he's gonna be here next week to talk about it, and he's from a local union.
The one question I had on this, I was looking at it, all sounds great. But sometimes like the Patriot Act sounded great until you actually read it. And Citizens United sounds like a good idea until you figure out what it is. So I think it'd be really helpful if we could get Crystal to send us the actual legislation that we're going to vote to support.
Oh, it's for the last,
At the very end of it, it lists three things. And I think it would be nice for those of us who want to read it, to have a link to the legislation. That's the only question I have.
it's very easy. Okay. If you just do a search for the HR number there.
Yeah, but I think.
For our own record.
I think it would be good if we were given a link for copies of the legislation that we're supposedly voting for.
And there's information there missing, like data. There's information like missing data, right? In terms of how long it's going to, how it's going to affect our local office, right?
Well, it's not about missing data. This is just in support of legislation. And then if we look at the three bills that are referenced, this is in support of legislation that is going to try to defend things like Medicaid, Social Security, and so forth. It's not, there is no data involved.
Well, I'm saying that what I'm saying is that right now I'm experiencing, working with Social Security, that, it's hard to get a hold of anybody now.
Of course it is.
And, it's going to take, what took 3 to 6 months might take 9 to 12 months. So there's more information in there, how it's going to affect us locally also.
But I think we need to see what it is we're going to vote.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's all I'm saying.
So can I have an introduction in a second? I want to run. The next resolution is just to revise the previous resolution that left out $500 in a proposal. Can I have a introduction a second, please? Gary and
Anybody.
As you heard earlier on, the fire department has a new standards for young participation. Can I have an introduction a second? Jennifer and Dawn. And lastly, the police department has asked for a money to cover the replacement of air conditioning units at the police department. Dawn and okay, that's it. Anything else council members like to discuss? No? Public? Okay, hand up. Oh, you got hand up.
I got a word on the first time. So I was asking you guys to come and get around, supporting efforts to make peace today. I'm sorry, I'm just trying to speak. And I think this is a very important issue. So today there was a survey done where 55% of the population of the elected center would like to see the president assassinated. So I think there's a dire thing going on in the world, and it would be nice if some people would stand up and support it in the right thing.
Okay.
So I don't know, I'm sorry, so I don't know how everyone here feels, but I would like you all to take a stand. In terms of where you are with this, in terms of threatening, and if you are actually for not tolerating this, then you would actually do something.
Thank you, Roy.
Otherwise, you could be seen to be on the other side of the people that want to do harm and destruction. That's all I got to say.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bonnie, did you have something to-
Yeah, just for that last resolution for the air conditioning, is it possible for you to forward the bid that we would be? I understand that's been better.
I can forward you all three that we.
Yeah, I understand. All three is not necessary, but just the one that won, I'm sure you
Okay.
better.
Are they split units? Nico, so our data room that holds all our servers,
That
and
should be
basically
our
runs our entire department. The AC units for that, are completely out of repair.
I just, the reason I'm, oh, sorry. The reason I was asking is because, I know New York State has some, nice incentives to go with heat pumps that meet a specific like efficient requirements.
Okay.
I just want to see if, if we can utilize some of that as a government.
Sure.
If it reduces our costs and we get better systems out of it, why not?
Yeah, of course. And, along with that too, I know you didn't ask, but, we believe that these issues have come from a power surge that happened last year, sometime in June. So we are trying to see if some of that cost is covered or at least reimbursed through insurance.
Yeah.
Don't know how long that will take.
So the surge possibly might have damaged the current
Right,
system.
because we've been consistently having to have,
Additional
service on it, since then.
Thank you.
You wanna make? Yeah. Tell we adjourn, right?
Motion to adjourn?
Yes.
Second? All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye.